really, you know, at this age, I don't mean to sound patronizing, but it's full of hope and potential and desires and dreams. And what I really want to talk about this morning in what's a very sort of freely framed conversation is how much closer are we to a woman quite simply being able to realize her dream. There's a big word called feminism. People debate it, people disagree, people agree, people embrace it, reject it. All it simply means is the freedom to be who you are, the freedom to be who we want to. So that is what I really want to discuss with the panel. We'll obviously break it down into specifics. I want this to be interactive. We don't want to do monologues here. We're going to get the conversation rolling, and I will keep time aside for your questions and your comments, and then we'll bring those questions and comments back to the panel as well. Optically, it may look like this year was an inflection point for gender. Here in the United States of America, you have the collapse of some of the biggest icons, the Me Too movement. It has spread globally. It has become an inflection point for women to come out and talk about abuse and harassment. Women are angry. Women are saying, we've had enough. When you break it down into economics, it would look like women are now leading companies, women are leading organizations, women are everywhere. But is that really the case? In particular, in our own diaspora, back home in India, I want to share a statistic with you, since this is a policy school. 20 million Indian women actually left the workforce between 2004 and 2010. 20 million left the workforce, right? So I want you to just keep that in mind when we look at all the great women who are making strides and no one's taking away from that. That does the data tell us a different story? And I'll start with you, Safina. We'll come to our personal stories maybe a little later. I want to be able to frame this conversation in a way that it's identifiable for everybody. You focus on educating girls. We all believe that girls should be educated. But we still have girls dropping out of school in India for something as elemental as not being able to go to school when you have your monthly period because you don't actually have a sanitary pad. You're ashamed, you're stigmatized. Those are among the many reasons that girls drop out of school. Girls drop out of school sometimes because the school and college is too far away, because there aren't enough bathrooms, all of which we now have the government in India focusing on. You now have a public conversation around this. But how much has changed and how much has not?
And you're right, a lot of it has changed, and I'll just give you, so everything I'll say today, because India is a big country and no state, you can't make any generalizations. However, where I come from, in my experience, we work today with across 12,000 villages and 21,000 schools, but only rural, remote, tribal areas, Rajasthan MP. So that's where my experience and what I'm saying is coming from. I just wanted to sort of qualify that. But really, the barriers, it's one thing to say, is it a toilet or is it whatever else, but really, the bedrock of it is patriarchy. To give you a symbolic example of that, just last year, because you're saying how is things changing or whatever, last year in Ajmer district, we're sitting in a room with a bunch of girls, and I said, let's just do a round of introductions. And the third girl who stood up, and she said, my name is Naraz Nath. Naraz means angry. So I said, beta, why is your name Naraz? And she said, because when I was born, everybody in my family was so angry.
God.
That they named her Naraz Nath, right? A few more girls down, another girl, her name is Antim Bala. Because the family and the community wanted कि ये आखिरी लड़की होनी चाहिए, इसके बाद you should लड़का चाहिए, तो Antim Bala नाम है. Then and the lady who is my community volunteer in that room who is teaching, her name is Achuki. Not wanted, but has arrived. Right? So whatever data you may see of women who are like heading banking or whatever else, at the foundation of it, patriarchy, our girls are still unwanted, right? And that kind of is at the source of it.
So I think those are very, very telling and disturbing stories, and I do want to take this straight away to Captain Abhimanyu, because, sir, Haryana has grappled with an unfavorable sex ratio. Haryana has grappled with Khap Panchayats, where, groups of self-appointed sort of cultural village committees actually dictate what a woman should wear, who she should get married to, and so on. And I just want to understand from a government point of view, how does a politician deal with a conservative base that may not want patriarchy to go, a political environment which is still dominated by men. You need to win elections, but you also need to be true to some principles. And I'm curious to understand how a politician balances that in today's India. It's on, sir. Yeah, it's on.
Thank you. Thank you, Burqa, for allowing me to intervene here in this panel. And I see myself as a minority.
You are not
And I see
alone.
some-
I think that when we look at parliament and legislatures, it's quite the other way around. So we're having our moment now.
I'm really glad to be. I'm really glad to be representing here. I thank the organizers for giving us some reservation here in this panel. And I can't disagree with what Asha said. That the real
Safina.
Sorry, Safina. I'm sorry. Safina said. The real issue behind the whole problem is because I come from Haryana and I come from those rural areas. I represent a constituency which is completely rural, which doesn't have any urban even to say. And I come from that CAP land, and I also belong to one of those CAP institutions as a member of the society. So, I mean, I think that it is the patriarchal mindset which is the basic problem behind the whole situation. But thankfully, and I want to bring that aspect here, that things are changing, the perceptions are changing, and the whole mindset is changing. And I've seen in the last 3.5 years that when we started this campaign of Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, in Haryana the gender ratio was as bad as 8:1:4. In just about 2 years, we went hammer and tongs against these termination of pregnancies and then the determination of gender, of the
Sex selection
Yes,
tests when a child is born.
all these things. So we went so strong against them. In fact, we went across the borders in Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, and Rajasthan, and we acted against those errant doctors. We put many of them behind bars, and I shared it with quite a feeling of success that we are today 900 plus in last 2 years. That's from 814 to 900 plus girls against every 1,000 boys.
How were you able to change it? As you know,
Yeah.
when we zero
Yes.
in on, because one of the things that I feel, you know, money talks. It's a very crass thing to say, but finally you do have families who are beginning to see the potential of women as earners, right? And that was never the case. The reason that classically a family wanted a boy is because you never thought that the girl could earn and bring home the money. One of the reasons, not just the only reason. What do you identify as a key changing point where you feel that people now in that rural heartland that you represent are beginning to change, however slowly?
I think there are many things. This is not just one thing I can attribute it to. The whole change in the mindset is very visible and very conspicuous, even in the CAP institutions. When we started this Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao campaign, we had a meeting of all these social leaders, and we asked them to join in. And if you remember, there was a campaign, Selfie with Daughter, which was started by a Sarpanch in Haryana, and it became viral across the whole country. Now, the people in Haryana, they were clicking their pictures with their daughters and posting it on social media. And the new things that started after that, when they supported it, is that wherever a girl was born, contrary to what is happening in Rajasthan or anywhere else, when a girl is born now, those rituals which were exclusive for the boy's birth, like we call it the Shotan or Kuha Pujan, now that's happening in the villages in Haryana. And there are, you must have seen in the media, probably you can Google it, that there are girls who sat on a horse for their wedding ritual, just to make themselves as an exception, just to speak out, just to give a message in the villages. In the villages. So there are instances of girls carrying their family, like parents' body for the last rites, giving shoulders to that, for the cremation. Now the girls are coming out. So,
but you know, I want to interject you there because I want to share a little story. I'd gone to report there was a terror attack on an airbase in a place called Pathankot. And I'd gone to report it, and I was in this little village in Punjab. And one of the Air Force officers who had been martyred in that terror attack, her young daughter is a school teacher from Rajasthan. And you know, I walked with her to where her father was actually going to be cremated. And then suddenly I was walking in this single file of hundreds of women, and suddenly I saw all the women stopped. Right? They just stopped. And I looked around and said, what's happened here? And they were told to stand at about a kilometer's distance, less than a mile, from where the father was going to be cremated, because women are still not allowed in that, you know, in the last rites. And then this young woman strides across the field, and she decides to break break that gender barrier. She walks across. She's the only woman from her village who goes there, and she lifts the body on her shoulders with the men, and she performs the last rite. So that story to me caught both how deep the problem is and how women are beginning to resist it.
Exactly, this is what I'm saying. The first thing is that the women are resisting it, they're making the change themselves. Second thing is that there is a receptivity in the minds of the people that they are accepting it rather than welcoming it. I'll just go to another example here of my personal experience. We in Haryana started women police stations manned by only women police officials in every district headquarters. Now, I was going to inaugurate as a minister in my convoy. You understand how the convoys work in India. So that women police station in the district SR. So the moment I entered in the boundary of district SR, there were 4 motorcycles. There were 2 girls riding each motorcycle. They were leading the convoy as a pilot. And it was about another 30 kilometers that we had to move. So I was a little scared that these girls are riding these motorcycles and how will they traverse the roads and they'll have to go fast. They were police officials. And there was a pilot vehicle ahead of that. So this is a jeep. Now this was going very fast. So I called my personal security officer. I said that immediately communicate on the wireless communication that they must not be driving so fast, otherwise these girls will have a problem following them. But somehow they didn't stop. The moment we reached at the police station, I called that police officer who was there in the jeep, and I was so stunned.
They were all women.
They were all women. I said, you're driving too fast. And believe you me, that all those girls, they were very smartly dressed. They were holding their weapons better than what I've seen.
And yet, we can all pick
it's
up
just a
these,
change perception.
but we can pick up these individual stories, but only data tells the truth. So we do have to start looking at these numbers. And Asha is somebody who invests as a venture capitalist, who invests in startups. One of the things I've seen women, no matter how empowered we are, women struggle to ask for money. I don't know if this room shares this experience. Do you agree? I'm seeing a lot of women nodding in agreement. Like raise your hand if you think that women are a little more reticent than men about praising ourselves and asking for money. Yeah? Yeah. So Anki is from Facebook is here, and I'm interested to see someone who leads such a big sort of organization in India also raising her hands. But we have this thing of let our work speak for itself. We have this thing, our work will speak for itself. I have sat in on meetings where men have negotiated better pay packets, much better economic deals, and I'm sitting here saying, oh, my work will speak for itself. So when you look at women who come to pitch, do you find a difference between how women pitch their ideas and how men pitch their ideas? And as a woman, how do you respond?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, but before I get to that, Barkha, if I may,
Yes.
I want to share a little story about, how we have unprecedented opportunities on making a difference even in the, my parents live in Ahmedabad, and I was visiting them, and I saw this little girl in our house. She was about 8. And she was, hanging out with my parents and, just eating and hanging. I mean, they'll say, go get me a glass of water or something. And, I had a meltdown with my parents. I'm like, how is this possible that you guys are my folks and there's this little girl here and she's not in school? And I insisted that, she go to school this time. But the grandmother kept telling me that she doesn't like it, this, that. I finally went to see the school. And I don't blame her, actually. So, so I think there is some kind of an opportunity here that we all have, given how prolific technology is these days, to form little peer groups. So we started something called School in the Cloud Pilot, where it is, like 4 or 5 kids together will work, different mixed ages, and they'll work together. Just having access to the internet, no teachers.
No teachers.
No teachers. So it's actually very...
so who runs the content for what they're consuming?
So right now we are just getting the content from School in the Cloud itself, which is run by Sugata Mitra from University of Newcastle. So we got the content from him, but it just goes to show that kids can learn on their own if they had a few tools and just had information at their fingertips.
So do you see technology as that great disruptor in the gender debate?
I mean, it has to be, absolutely. There is no doubt in my mind. It has, look, even if it is not, perfectly matched, it is still, I just think 2 things that could really shift the balance are access to electricity and the internet. if girls had that, just a sort of a mobile phone and so on, I think that would make the world of a difference.
So it's so interesting you say that, because there is a significant gap in the number of women who own mobile phones in India and the number of men. And that phone is not just seen as a phone, it's seen as a symbol of autonomy. We don't want girls to have autonomy, so we don't want girls to have access to the internet and access to smartphones. Talk a little bit more, and I want you to come back on capital also after that, on how this actually works. So when these girls started studying on the internet, school in the cloud, what happened to them?
Their standard of, they were at par with private schools. It's incredible. The results are incredible. And so, given how radical this understanding is now, it's even more urgent that children have access to the internet and some amount of, questions and something to guide their thinking. But that said, about what was that?
Capital.
No, before that, what was that?
On how we're bad at asking for money.
No, skip ahead. Just now, sorry, it was. I'll get back to that. But
well, let's talk about that.
So, okay. So the thing is with this. So school in the cloud. Acha nahi. So I'll tell you how. So with the Grameen people, what they've done is a very interesting kind of a model. Look. This is making it work, right? You got to kind of.
Yeah.
They've done something called Grameen phones now. All they do is they take these. So United States retires, I think, 50 or 60 million phones, smartphones, every year. So this company based in UK, Indians actually, they take these phones and they repurpose them. They put new software and new apps on them, and then they distribute it to women in villages. Now guess what? A woman sits in the village, she now has a phone. And it's just the Grameen phone. So people walk up to her, and there's a line now. There are queues outside. People just want to use the phone. They want to look at the phone, they want to use the phone, they want to see, what is Facebook and what is this, what is that. And she makes money. So I think once you start adding that angle of her generating income while sitting at home, not threatening the patriarchy yet, I think these are ways to really kind of start.
So I don't want to talk about economic self-reliance, but just on my original question of capital and how you invest in, how does a woman pitch differently from a man?
No, it's a complete lack of confidence. There is, in general, there is a lack of confidence. There is the sense that it happens to me.
Really? Doesn't look like that.
There are times when it happens to me. I would be sitting on a panel or on a board or something, and if a guy starts talking, I'm like, no, let him speak first. So, the thing is, it is so inbuilt in us that this revolution that's going on under our noses right now, it's going to take many years to unfurl. I think there is no stopping here, there's no slowing down here. So the capital raising modalities of women entrepreneurs are definitely still very, very diffident. But that said, there is, I think compared to other countries where I invest, including Pakistan, I now notice that the women in India actually are much more out there. I think we have support from Indian men much better than in other countries actually.
So this is something that I want Safina to come in on. Why do we need the support of those men? Right? At some point, one day I want to say, I do not want my Oscar speech to thank the men. I just want to say I did it myself. But of course, I come from a background of privilege. There is a certain privilege, a certain sort of set of rights and freedoms that my economic background, and I've never felt caste prejudice. There is an intersectionality in this conversation that we do have to talk about. And on the ground, while somebody like me can stand up and say, why do I have to thank the men? Asha is right that there are, in the families that maybe you encounter when you're trying to persuade families, send your girl to school. It's not possible to do that without the men coming on board, right? Can you talk a little bit about the role of men in this debate?
Sure. And so the way we do all of our work is at the ground level, we have a community volunteer called Team Balika. These are young, educated, passionate individuals from their villages. They're about 12th pass, most of them. In the initial days, I believed that all of these Team Balika volunteers would be women, right? So we would do these recruitment events and everything, and a lot of young men would land up. And we'd be like, nahi, aap thoda side karo jaiye. And then we would be looking for women. But it's very hard to find women because most of the villages I work in, there are hardly any women who are 12th pass. So finally, as I say, jhak maar ke, we said, chalo, we'll let the boys in. And it was such a slap on my face because I realized how transformative it is. And the battle for equity is a battle we need to fight, standing shoulder to shoulder. And it was so powerful to have young boys stand up in their villages and say, nahi, hamare gaon mein every girl will go to school, versus making it into a women's movement. And today we have 11,500 Team Balika volunteers. 60% of them are young men. And it was just fantastic to see the kind of change that they can bring about. In the last 10 years, together they have brought back 200,000 out of school girls back into school. And that's the power of that individual action and joint action. It is that he for she. We need, patriarchy will only be broken once young men, young women, old, all of us sort of stand together.
So is the conversation including men enough? I don't know what the men here feel. Like, do you feel left out? Like, raise your hand if you're a man and you feel left out of the gender conversation. Like, you feel that no one's talking to you. That's a few hands. And I'm just, can you share why you feel that?
The issue is, it has become a politicized issue. Instead of saying this is our family problem, it's as a family when we say kutumbam. It's all our problem. That's when we will deal with it. Whether when you take care of your sister, when you take care of your mother, you take care of your wife, you take care of your bhabhi, you take care of your daughter.
But what if women want to take care of themselves?
But collectively, this is what divide and conquer has destroyed the world. The argument that you're bringing is reinforcing the divide that you're trying to conquer. Why are you trying to reinforce the hatred amongst this versus that? This is us. It's us versus us. It's not you versus
Okay,
you.
I'm going to park that. I'll take one more comment because I saw one more hand. Yeah, okay, at the back.
See, I think the difference is, do you want to deal with the issue as shock and awe, or do you want to deal with as a gradual change? I mean, the feeling of men being left out of the conversation may be a relative thing. That they are being left out relative to what they were
Earlier.
involved in earlier. So shock and awe might be a little too much shock to the system. So do you want to approach it as a gradual process and not make everything change suddenly one fine day in the morning you wake up and everything.
So here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say why what you call shock and awe, I would just call basic human rights. I don't think people need to be persuaded to send their girls to school, to be able to be guarded from harassment and abuse, to be able to have the same food as the boy, to have the right to live, to have the right to love, to have the right to dream and have the right to educate. And yet, let Captain Abhimanyu come in. I'm actually grateful that both of you have shared what you said, even though the room is going to pounce on you, led by me. Because this is how people feel.
Yeah.
And we have to deal with this attitude. We can't pretend it doesn't exist.
Are you threatening with the might of the majority?
No. No, but
All right,
I'm threatening with the principle of simply equality.
I respect your right to think that you would want one day that you don't have to thank men. And I respect that because it calls for autonomy, it calls for independence in your own life. But I, as a man, cannot think even a day without living even a day without thanking my mom, my wife. I can't think even a day. Or my daughter. I would really want my daughter one day to stand up and on her own. And she doesn't have to thank me because her standing itself at a place where she wants to be is enough of gratitude for me. So I think that we have to understand each other, we have to respect each other, that gender sensitivity has to be there, gender autonomy has to be there. Men and women, both, in the coming generation, I don't see it happening in my generation completely, but I definitely see that they understand each other, they give their due rights, they give their due space, and we deal one-on-one with the physiological difference, whatever it may be, but we deal each other equally. That's more important.
So can I ask both Asha and Safina to share what has been that moment in your life when maybe you thought, I'd never have to struggle, I'm impervious to patriarchy, oh, I don't, I'm above all this, and then you find that at every you can stratify the problems. As I said, there is now an acknowledged intersectionality in the debate and what caste and caste, race has to be factored in. But even for all of us who come from relative positions of privilege and entitlements, could you share a little bit of your own journeys and what for you was an aha moment or a transformative moment where you realized, even I'm not impervious to this patriarchy?
Sure. So there were kind of two big moments for me. One, I was the first one in my family's history to actually get admission at overseas, to go out of India to study. And half the family was very proud. The other half was like, "Arey, her father's going to spend so much money, just a girl." There's this like constant. My father's best friend said to him, "Arey yaar, Yusuf, but ladki hai, And unfortunately, my father doesn't have. I'm the only child, so. But and then in my life to get out and to study was the most transformative thing to have happened to me. I mean, doors open for me today because of my education. What you said, it gives you the freedom, it gives you
Confidence.
the confidence to really, walk anywhere. And I got that confidence to go work in Ecuador or Mexico. And I would sit with Ecuadorian women and they would say, "You know what? A few years ago, we couldn't open a bank account without a husband or a father signing on." So it's patriarchy is like across the board. But I really did feel at some point that I have broken that through, right? And I came back and I was setting up a clinic near Mussoorie in the mountains. And my father said, "I'll come and help you set it up." And while the work was going on, we took a walk through the village and a lot of people gathered and said, "Acha, what do you do? Who are you?" and all this. And the women started to talk to my father. And they said, "Aap kya karte hain?" And he said, "I'm an actor." So they were all like, even more people gathered at that point. And then they said, "How many children do you have?" And he said, "This is it, I just have one daughter." And जिसको हिंदी में बोलते हैं ना, छाती पीट पीट के रोना, like दहाड़ मार मार के रोना, एकदम. The women started to cry and weep, saying, "Why has God cursed you? Why have you been so cursed?" And then some of them came up and said, "Abhi bhi time hai." Like marry again, try again, like you're a, virile man, just do it. But it was like, and I felt so invisible. For that, really, it was so in your face. I felt so invisible. And my father just put his arms around my shoulder and he said, "This is my daughter, this is my son, this is my everything," and led me away. But I thought, I can walk away, but what about all those girls in that village who are born there, who have to grow up with that kind of feeling? And that for me was really it didn't matter how far you went, you were still invisible in a lot of people's eyes.
For me, I think, I think I've had a really strange history actually. My mom was a teenager when she was pregnant with me, and she had gone to the temple to, climbed a mountain and gone to the temple to pray for a boy. And then when I came out, she was so ashamed of herself that she declared it was a boy. So the whole world, all the relatives and everybody thought I was a boy. I mean, and then finally she kind of admitted and said, "Oh, you know what, no, it's okay. I mean, it's a girl,
And
so,
she told you the story later?
I mean, the whole family knows, right? So it was like,
But how did that make you feel? See, you can laugh about it today. But at that moment, as a child, to feel like I was not wanted, what does that do to you?
No, so the thing is, I think I'm still going through understanding what this was. But, clearly it was some, I'm still shocked that this happened, but...
Did you ever ask her?
Yeah, I did. I did. But, now when I think about it, I think it was more that she, was embarrassed about it and, and then my dad put his foot down and said, "No, let's fix the situation." And, but I think okay, so that's one episode, and I'm still trying to figure out exactly what happened with mom, because she's a very loving person, actually. And she also grew up in a family with, 3 girls and 1 boy, and was completely marginalized as a girl.
So do you think she repeated what she'd experienced?
I think she was just trying to kind of protect me from that situation of sort of like, "Oh, it's a girl, let's just, think of her as a boy for now. We'll figure out later how to, correct the situation." So, but I think that said, I'll tell you, I feel like this gender thing is a very complex thing. It's a very complex human problem. It's very, it's emotionally and so on, it's a wrenching thing. At the peak of my career, when I was, on top of the world, I was, fancy board seats, had some really good exits, and, we came to be known as the Google family. And I got pregnant, and then I had my daughter, and something in me shifted so radically. It like there was no comparison, to be honest, between just sort of my, at that time, my venture capital stuff and the baby. And maybe because I was an older mother. But it's got me thinking a lot actually about what is it that, makes us human, and we are so different. We are all so different that none of these formulae really should be, it cannot be that, just, one has to
One
follow
size
X,
fits
Y, Z.
all.
Yeah,
One
it
size
does
fits
not.
all.
Yeah, one size does not fit all. And more importantly, I feel that it's a complex issue. And it's not as simple as one thinks. I mean, I've been widowed a few years now, right? I started dating someone who is actually from Pakistan, and I mean from Bay Area, but Pakistani origin. And I discovered that my day would be structured the whole day with busy with meeting startups, this, that, right? And he didn't have that much to do, and so I started sensing that this is going to cause a big strain in our relationship. And I started thinking about it pretty seriously, and I've come very close to sort of saying, maybe I want to be around him more than I want to be with new startups.
But can I?
It's a very bizarre thing, but it's such a human thing, right? That it's.
So one, I mean, I think we really appreciate you sharing two very personal stories. But here's where I'm going to push you, and you're going to forgive me for pushing you, because this essentialism around, I had my child and I felt my priorities change. I had my relationship and I feel my priorities change. I'm all for this if men experience it too. When I start feeling skeptical about it is only, there's a certain kind of entrenched socialization where the responsibility for keeping a relationship alive, for keeping that house together, for putting that food on the table. Those ads where you have these women, these perfect super women, and they're always perfectly dressed. They know what's happening in their boardroom. They also know what's for dinner. They also know कि आज मटर पनीर. Oh, today I made मटर पनीर and tandoori chicken. This superwoman thing, this onus that we take on, this is a set of chains. This is not freedom. This is imprisonment. The pressure to be everything to everybody. Why don't men go through it?
So I think let's take a more, in fact I would even dare to call it a spiritual view, okay, which is that in the larger scheme of things, here and now, what makes us happy, and so those kind of things are very different from being a part of a movement, being part of, I mean I'm a card carrying feminist. I've been known as a card carrying feminist, right? And yet I do find that deep down, my ideas, if I really took a deep breath, shut my eyes and meditated on what's important to me, it's different from what I theoretically believe. It's so strange, and I don't know if it's just me, but I mean, it could be just me. But
Yeah, it could be just you.
It could be
an individual thing.
It could be the fact that my mom botched it, huh?
No, I'm saying we have to recognize that individual dreams,
Completely,
as long
yes.
as they're not essentialized by gender, that is
Yes.
where I would start to differ.
And I think with the guys, look, I just think they're a weak gender, by the way. They're a much, no, yeah,
Okay,
they're a much,
hang on, you'll get
no,
a chance
they're
to
a much,
speak.
I really want to say this, they're a much weaker gender. I mean, they fall apart. If we stop pretending that they're great, they fall apart.
Okay, I'm saying Anki Das from Facebook wants to make a point. Anki, please, yeah.
I think fundamentally it's about two things. One is about choice. The only way to rebut essentialism is to figure out that as a society we recognize that choice is primary and all human beings are equal. That being said, if you accord a lot of primacy to choice, whatever you choose to do, whatever works for you is the right decision, man or woman, right?
What if that choice is a function of that socialization?
So that is where the bias comes in, right? Like, and all of us have heard about this. There are management courses around this in terms of managing, unconscious bias.
Yeah.
Every society has it, every individual has it, and that's where you've got to train your brain. The second thing, which I think is fundamental to social order, is this entire thing about sharing power.
Yeah.
Gender is about sharing power. Who likes sharing power? We've got a politician on the table. We should have some. We've got to negotiate. That happens in family as a unit also, right? Like any sociology class will tell you that. But that's a maturity of going to the next stage of evolution, where you do not do sex selection, where you do not sort of eliminate people. You do not eliminate life just because they belong to a certain gender, because that, I don't know what kind of society that would be. And also, in terms of, there's data to show that, and I would highly encourage people to look at the study which the World Bank did and they released it in April of 2017. It's called Precarious Drop. What is absolutely startling in that study is that post-liberalization in the last 2 decades, the number of women who've dropped out of the workforce or gone away is a 12% number,
Yeah.
which is huge, because you would think that larger economic opportunity would lift all boats. But here's what has happened. Casual labor has gone away as we have more of these government schemes like NREGA, etc., so guaranteed job employment. What is happening is that men are cornering a lot of that, and women don't want to deal with the stress of being everything which you mentioned, Barkha. This is at the lower economic level, also at the higher economic level. If you look at STEM education, science and technology, lead rates for women are so high.
Yeah.
All the usual reasons, lack of sponsorship, effective mentorship, opportunity, right? And if you keep on squeezing women out from the womb, out from the spaces where they can sort of be in positions of power or decision making, I fundamentally think it's a power discussion at some level.
It is.
That's a fundamental problem.
But let me put out a radical idea on the table, and I'm going to open this for the floor and come back to the panel with the panel's permission. I think that we focus so much on equality at work that we haven't focused enough on equality at home. And if you do not have equality at home, when you talk to women who drop out of jobs, yes, it is a power struggle, but there's also a power struggle at home. And women have fought for power at work, but have not necessarily fought for that same power at home. And I feel that that is creating a certain amount of disruption in all of our lives. And I'm just wondering if anyone has a personal anecdote, a personal experience, something you wanted to do and you were held back or you struggled. Yes, let me start with you.
So one example that I would give, it wasn't quite my own, but I saw just this morning.
Yeah.
The first keynote that we saw with Mr. Ravish Kumar, the last question, I was boiling angry.
What was
at
the
end of
question?
it. So not the question, but we were out of time. There were 2 of the organizers, female organizers, who were saying, okay, no more questions, no more questions. But then this one guy got up, stood, like,
Took the floor.
took the floor, took the entire stage, everything, and ended up getting his way. One thing that kept bothering me, that if this had been the other way around, if there were 2 male organizers trying to say this to a woman, including myself, I would have sat down. And it had nothing to do with my confidence or the confidence of those 2 women. But there was something just drastically wrong. I'm not sure what that psychology was, but I'm still very angry just thinking about that.
And also what they would have said to a woman who refused to sit down. It's also the other way around, right? Hysterical, aggressive, and all used as insults. So I think power is inherent at that. Yes, and the pink shirt, yes.
Yes, so my question
Just speak a little louder.
Yeah, sorry. As Minister was talking about that when he saw that the women were driving bikes and were driving jeep. So I come from a criminal law family, all my parents and everybody's in law. And I decided to do forensic science. So the first question from my dad was, and my mom was, you should not go on the field and look at murders and deal with murderers and stuff like that. I told them, what if my brother decided to do forensic science? So my dad told me, he's an educated person, has business and everything. He's like, that's fine for him, he can fight for his own. So my belief and my thing is, for anything that I want to do, different roles in society, like journalism, you want to be a CEO of the company, why do we have to justify ourselves at the front? That I had to run off from India and come here and study, so that I have my space to and get the education I want to. So why do we have to justify ourselves every time in the field? I do not.
And there is a certain level of exhaustion that creeps in from constantly fighting, and we underestimate how many women actually get tired of the fight, right? Yes, here.
My perspective is completely different.
Just project a little more so we can hear you.
Although I'm of Indian descent, my parents came here in the 60s, so I was born here. When my mom was pregnant with me, she thought for sure she was having a boy, very similar to Asha's story. And when I was born, she didn't even have a name for me. And she's told me this story. My mother's still alive, we talk about it. And so then fast forward, 20 some odd years, I've gone to school, everything else.
I'm married, and I'm pregnant. And I decided that I want to stay home. It's a choice my husband and I made. Both of us had lost our fathers, and we wanted one parent to be home. So I chose to stay home. And my mother was very upset with me. What was the point of your going to school and getting an education if you're just going to stay home and take care of your child? So either which way, we lose.
No, but do you think your husband could have also stayed at home instead of you? Because that's when I would think there's equality in those set of choices.
He would have gladly, my husband is a phenomenal father. He changed more diapers than I did. He was willing to do everything and anything. But where we were in life at that point, he was in residency, he couldn't. It just wouldn't have happened, you know. But he would have if he could have. And he did come home after being at work for hours and hours and never once said, you know.
So, but there's another reason, I'm just throwing this out. We have 10 minutes left, so I'm going to take 4 or 5 questions from the floor and come back to the panel. If the panel wants to say anything to anything you've heard, just indicate that to me. There's another reason, if I was your mom, I may say the same to you. Not because education is worthless if you don't follow it up with a job, but economic self-reliance. For women to ever surrender that, in my opinion, to anybody. Anki, are you disagreeing with me?
I'm saying it's 100% different.
Oh, thank God. Yeah. So, economic self-reliance is so critical. It's so critical.
I totally agree, and my husband did too. And
Yeah.
but it was just because we were my parents were immigrant families, and so we wanted somebody to be at home. It was just I went back to work, but and I have economic reliance. But at that time, for those 2 or 3 years, it was a choice. And you know, being able to have that choice still felt like a burden.
Yeah, okay, you wanted to come in briefly on that, Asha, and then if people have things, okay, that's a lot of hands. I don't have that much time, I'll try and accommodate as many voices.
I just thought something that ties in both yours and, it's just that, okay, tell me where is the power here? So there's a couple, 75 and 80. The 75-year-old, the woman, is perfectly happy sitting at home, watching TV, going for a walk, calling up neighbors, sharing recipes, doing internet. The father wakes up in the morning and he takes, extreme care on grooming himself, wears a suit and a tie and shoes, and then he leaves for the court. He's actually got nothing to do. And my mom and I, we look at him and we're like, where is he going? Now, isn't that a vulnerable situation? I don't know how to, he's so vulnerable and he's so fragile that if we laughed at him and said, Dad, you've got nothing to do in the court, he would collapse. But Mom, on the other hand, is completely happy, busy and so on. I wonder, there are, you know what I mean? It's a meaning to
but
this.
But maybe it was a loss for him, right? Like in the sense that if you have worked all your life and then you suddenly have to stop working, there's a sense of loss, which if you haven't, been in a career, then you've already made that adjustment. I want to get in Captain Abhimanyu. I know lots of hands very briefly on Haryana because some of the greatest women Olympic, it struck me, I hadn't spoken about that. Yeah. Some of the greatest sportswomen have actually come from the state where there is also this sort of blot of the sex ratio which is now improved. But even in a film like Dangal, you guys have seen the film? Yeah, so even in a film like Dangal, you see that the father decides to bring up his daughters as wrestlers because he doesn't have boys. And it was his dream for his boys to be, these stars, and then he's left with these girls, so he has no choice but to give them that freedom. So I'm just wondering how you see these contradictions of our country. We're a really, truly contradictory, paradoxical country.
You really touched my understanding of the whole film Dangal. I'm sure most of you must have seen Dangal. I saw Dangal. It is our story. It is the story of Haryana. It's the story of changing Haryana. We are happy that the girls are coming out and getting into games like wrestling and boxing, and they're playing in the sports arenas of villages and in front of thousands and thousands of people clapping them. Not even a single guy would dare to whistle because there are CAP leaders around there. But
I have a disagreement.
But the real issue.
No, listen. On other fronts, and I have to put that on.
No, I'm coming to.
I made back home.
Barka, my concern is exactly what you said, that the entire story of Dangal. It was the father who had an unmet desire to win a medal himself or through his son, but ultimately he pushes his daughters. Now against the wish of the mother of the daughters, against the wish of those girls. Now this is something, despite such a great success story, the girls did not have a choice. So this is the power of choice that Aki was talking about. This is the power of choice that should be given. And I personally believe that in a relationship of husband and wife, it is the symbiosis that we need to generate. We have to cooperate. We have to give space to each other. We have to accommodate. We have to adjust. There are a lot of activities in my day-to-day life where my wife decides she has the power to tell me that this weekend you got to stay because I'm going out. She is working. I'm going out with our son who's 11 years of age, and these are the chapters you have to read it out for him, and this is the breakfast you have to pack for him. So there is a decision-making power that's there with you.
I would argue that without economic independence, that relationship can
Barkha,
never, any relationship can never
Exactly, Barkha. This is, I wanted to actually add from my side, being a student of economics and even as a finance minister, I always try to take a report from the bankers that how many credit facilities have been given to the women. And I totally believe in this. Without economic independence, you will not get the power of choice. So the first thing, you will make sure, and you have to make sure that you're independent, you're autonomous in your own right, and if there is something you don't give them space, you can actually walk away. So that kind of threat, perception, that will lead to the autonomy, that the respect, the due respect that one deserves. So this is so very important, however you get it. The financial autonomy is key, is a very key factor.
Okay, how much time do we have? I mean, we've got 5 minutes, so can I take, I'm going to leave us for concluding comments. This young boy here, yes. Sorry, from my age, you're a boy, yeah.
I have a question to all the panelists.
Yeah.
There was this issue which has been in the media for a while regarding the Padmavati controversy. I specifically want to raise this topic because when the self-proclaimed guardians of Rajput history of culture have put a bounty on Deepika's head or telling her they're going to chop off her nose, neither of our colleagues, I mean the female actresses who are much more intellectual or much more fan-following than all the other people in society or the ministers or the politicians, they haven't come out in support of her, or neither the male actors.
Okay, let me quickly answer this because I think a lot of people, including myself, really spoke up for the right of the film to release, and then we watched the film. And there's a whole different feminist debate you need to have on the contents of the film, where you make mass self-immolation by women look beautiful. So let's leave Padmavati for a separate panel. And yes, next to you, yes.
Hi, my name is Smita, and I know you're talking about financial independence, but I went and lived in India, and what I noticed so strongly there is women being women's worst enemy, and it's coming from the whole psychological thing that you mentioned the ladies were crying. You didn't mention the men saying, oh, so bad that you have a daughter. I noticed so much hatred from women, and even if you stand up for things that you would expect the women, it's not just in India, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So how would you address that instead of blaming if women just took the whole responsibility on themselves?
Let me take 2-3 comments together so I can fit in as many people as possible. Someone who hasn't spoken, yes, here in the red jacket, yeah.
My other problem is symbolism of women on the table. So many of very often we see, like you mentioned, that women are made to sit on the horse, etc. That addresses them getting a seat at the table, but not the real voice at home. And then the society starts arguing that you had the opportunity, but you didn't do it. That's because you've not been brought up or not been given an opportunity to even voice what you want.
Okay.
No, it's not that she was made to sit on the horse.
Okay.
She decided to sit on the
Yes,
horse
exactly.
as a rebel.
That's
It
true.
was not that she was made to.
Okay, that's an important clarification here in the front row. Yeah.
Towards greater equality. So not just in terms of developing women's independent voice and confidence, but also giving them
Tools to achieve that.
well, the environments and situations that they can thrive using those.
I think those will be our concluding comments on that particular point. Yes, there in the third row. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, you. Yeah.
So yeah, adding on to her
Louder.
Adding on to her comment, I just want to make another point and back to the panel, saying that the number of women generally in workplaces in apart from Bollywood, let's say, is typically much lower. And then it goes back to how much women can support each other, and why doesn't that happen?
Well, I think the Me Too movement is an example actually of women supporting women. It's been a very, very powerful movement that we didn't get a chance to really talk that much about, but really it's a sign of, it's a movement of solidarity. It really is a movement of solidarity. Yes, sir. Yes, you. Yes.
So,
which one?
all I want to say over here is like,
Sir, boliye, I want 2 minutes left.
okay, all I want to say over here is, sitting in this room, we cannot compare West and East. They are two different things. We were ruled by Britishers for 200 years. Only in India, till today, after Britishers left, we still follow ladies first. We have separate cultures for them in the trains. We have special reservations for them. But you got to also understand that 70% of the population in India still lives in a united family system. There is only 30% population, which is our generation which is growing now, who are moved out, and that's why they are economically well settled, I can say, or they support each other.
So you're saying there's no one size fits all, which we've already acknowledged. I will go back to the room and take 2 last comments here in the grey sweater, and then the gentleman there back.
So I want to say about the economic independence to you also, sir. I also come from a Jat family and I belong to a village in UP. My youngest sister who was born was named Antima. She didn't survive, unfortunately. And so I come from a family where we have seen food being taken away from us and given to boys. And
You have experienced that personally?
Yes. I'm the eldest and my brother is the youngest. So we are 3 sisters and the younger brother. So what I believe is, I think there is one simple solution to this, is that if the government can somehow make it mandatory for, I mean there are laws, but it is not being followed. There is no inheritance for women. I mean, I even this day, I cannot ask my parents that, I will get a fair share, because legally, I can hire the biggest lawyer in India, but culturally, I'll be outcast. They'll say, oh, you are
There's a law already. Yeah.
I mean, there is a law, but I think the struggle is cultural.
No, Burqa, there is...
They want their right to
all right.
because they don't want to break relationships.
One minute, can she just complete her point and then we can respond? Let's not shout her down.
I'm saying that I want this a cultural revolution to start, and it's the men who should start, like men like you. In your family, please make it public that you have given half your property to your wife, and you're going to give half your property to your daughter. Make this public. These statements should be made public and make a public role. Like I don't know.
No, she's right. As far as my property is concerned, I think everything, she almost claims everything. So anyway, just coming back to the core issue, is that the law is in place.
Yes.
And they have complete inheritance right, as much equal to the boys of the family. But there is an issue here, because I, as a revenue minister, also encounter these some of these complaints sometimes when the girls come back and complain to us that my right has been not been respected, not been acknowledged, and my rights have not been transferred. So there is an issue here, but by and large, I can say there's more than 90% of the girls of this generation, in my generation also, my sisters or the other family members, or even my buas, my father's sisters, they have taken claim to their rights, and they've got their rights, and if at all there is any infringement of these rights, they come down very heavily against these rights. No one can deny that. You don't really need a lawyer, you simply have to file a suit with the revenue officer and you get your right.
I want to take it back to you. Was it a struggle for you? So can I, what's your name, ma'am?
Manisha.
Manisha, was it since you actually shared that you actually saw discrimination in food at home, inheritance rights, how did you get to be here? Was that can you share that? It just struck me.
So I was married really young. I belong to a very conservative family. My father is a politician, by the way, but I'm not allowed to enter politics, but anyway, that's a different story. So I got married really young, and I moved to US, and I lived here for 9 years. I got my education. I educated myself, and so against everybody's wishes, they thought I was crazy. And then I moved back to India, and I thought, let me give something back. So, but everyone here agrees that you can't fight your family. You can fight with the lawyers, but your family, so there has to be a cultural revolution which has to be led by men. Men in the power of position, like Captain Abhimanyu, like even my father, I'm trying, I don't want to hire a lawyer. I'm trying that, I convince him somehow that...
But you don't feel angry? You sound very calm.
So, yeah, I used to be angry, but now I've read a lot of books, and right now I'm reading Sex and World Peace. So I'm trying to understand everything. And everything you're saying here, that why women are also so against women, it's because the power center is the man. I mean, from generations, the wealth is accumulated with the man. So everybody...
Can you allow me to respond to
Yes,
this?
and please, I will with
Manisha,
the organizer's
Manisha,
permission, so I don't have another angry person.
Never expect a revolution coming in from those stakeholders whose rights or powers are being taken away.
Yes.
The revolution has to start from women. Yes, the men must support it, but it has to start from you.
Okay, concluding thoughts, just 30 seconds each.
I actually think that, the men actually have to step up and speak about it. Otherwise, what will happen is that this will continue being a women's issue. It's not really a women's issue, it's a men's issue actually.
Yeah.
Because it is perpetrated by the patriarchy. So if the men have to come, and actually men have started speaking out a lot in the US, and probably even in India. I mean, we have an example right here. But I think that needs to happen at a big scale, and you are absolutely right. That it also it's
I want the Khap panchayats to endorse this, that they didn't have...
Slippery slope, because if you look at them for endorsement, tomorrow they'll tell you who to marry and what to wear. Slippery slope.
Yeah. So yes, I think a lot of people in the room saying, are women to blame, are men to blame, whatever. I think we are all victims of patriarchy, and together we have to dismantle patriarchy. And that's really at the core of it. However, we also have to remember, Save the Children came out with a report that 1 in 100 girls in rural India is making it to class 12 and completing class 12. We are not going to have an equal number of police officers, police women, female teachers, politicians, all of that, unless that investment in girls' education and building that equity from the ground up is going to happen. We will always then end up celebrating the unusual suspects.
Yeah.
Just that tiny layer who has actually broken through, and we need to go away from just celebrating the peaks. They have to be celebrated, but we must also just bring up the entire population and create equity.
I just want to end with responding to someone who said, why do women, why are women's worst enemies? The one thing we have to understand about patriarchy and misogyny is that it is in fact one of the only things that is gender neutral. You can have really misogynistic women and really feminist men. And we have to understand that this is a process of very conscious and subconscious shaping of the minds. And really it's about shaping the minds of both sons and daughters, boys and girls, men and women. I think the fact that we've had this conversation that has been so participative, so in a sense non-hostile, speaks to something shifting in this conversation. Thank you for being a fantastic audience, and thank you for being a fantastic panel. Let's have a round of applause for our panel.
Thank you everyone for coming here, for sharing your perspectives, thoughts, your personal stories. We really appreciate you all chiming in. I would like to thank all the speakers here. Round of applause for everyone here. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
खराब है तो वो